Our guest today was only 19 years old when he committed crimes that led to a conviction of second-degree murder and burglary assault. He received 2 life sentences plus 18 years. Jack spent 19 years in Florida's most violent prisons and was paroled. He then violated his parole and was put back in prison for another 17 years. We're here at Noah's Halfway House in Tampa, Florida, where thousands of ex-convicts come to transition from institutionalized prison life back into society after spending 30, 40, even 50 years in prison. Hi, I'm Chris Wolf. So please join us as we go inside and speak to one of the men who's been recently paroled. Jack, welcome.
Hello, Chris. Glad to be here.
Jack, 2 life sentences plus 18 years? What was the additional 18 years for?
It was 2 life sentences, second-degree murder, 1 life, run consecutive, midnight burglary, and it was a 15-year additional sentence for the robbery. That was the total time.
My understanding is that you were born and raised in Miami and that you attended North Miami Beach Senior High School. However, you dropped out after the 9th grade, correct?
That is correct, when I turned 16, Chris.
And why do you think you dropped out when you were only 16 years old?
That was the year that I started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Took control of my life, and I started to become addicted. And I had no control of my life, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do, steal, rob.
So you were skipping school? You weren't going to school?
Absolutely. Yes, I was. I had no choice but to drop out, Chris.
So when you decided to leave school, your parents were okay with that?
They're okay was you're going to get a job now and you're going to work, Chris.
And so is that what you did?
Yes, I did. I got a job as working with my uncle who worked for the union as a roofer, and I did. I was working and stealing, Chris, but I was still doing the addictive behavior.
So you were working,
Yes.
Yet you were doing a tremendous amount of drugs, alcohol, and stealing.
That is correct, Chris.
Who were you stealing from?
I was stealing from my own family members, my mother, my father, my sisters, and anybody in the neighborhood, neighbors as well.
So you were 16, and what you told me was that you were out of control. Your alcohol, drugs, lying, stealing, what was going on?
That was correct. I think it was rebellious because my father was a drinker at one time, and he'd come home and he would take that out on me on any frustration or anything I did wrong, and I rebelled against that, and I knew it wasn't my father. I knew it was the drinking. So I mimicked that and just took it to another level.
Now, you told me when you were 17 years old, you would literally steal anything that wasn't nailed down just so you could sell it for drug money, correct?
That is correct, Chris.
How bad did it get?
It got to the point to where I even broke into my sister's house and stole the wedding money when she went on her honeymoon. That's how bad it got, Chris.
Wow. I also believe I think I read that you had stolen a truck with new cars on it, 6, 7, 8 new cars, drove them to a drug dealer and said, I'll trade you these 6 new cars for $3,000 in marijuana.
That is correct, I sure did.
What happened?
He had no problem giving me that money. He gave me the money, which was marijuana. To me, marijuana was money, either one of them, but it was the drugs I was after, and this drug dealer didn't care. He took the cars off my hands. I had it that bad. I really did.
So you gave this guy 6, 7, 8 stolen cars for $3,000?
Yeah, easy $100,000 worth of cars, easy.
And you actually stole a bulldozer, drove it several blocks through the woods, and pulled up to the same drug dealer's house.
That is correct.
And tried to trade the bulldozer for marijuana.
He came out and he seen me, and he went back in and came out with a gun and pointed at me and said, I'm crazy, that I need to leave. I said, no, I came here for some marijuana. I need to buy some marijuana. I want to get high.
So now you're 17, 18, 19. You've got 210 pending burglary charges against you?
That is correct.
What was going on?
I was getting so out of control doing burglaries every day. And it got to a point where I set myself up, Chris. And I set myself up to where a neighbor was watching me break into a house that I knew was vacant. and the cops had came, and I wanted to end it all. I knew I was going to die breaking into a house. I wanted to end it. It was out of control.
How much marijuana were you smoking at this point in time?
I was smoking by myself about an ounce a day.
And what happened eventually to 210 pending burglary charges?
Yes.
And they were all against you?
Yes. Pleading to the charges of second-degree murder and midnight burglary, and getting these 2 life sentences running consecutive with 15 running concurrent, they would be non-processed in the court system. Basically, they would expunge them from the record.
It seems as if you were running wild without any regard for consequences.
No regard at all. If you can imagine the Wild West, that was me with a gun. Just wild.
December 5th, 1981. This changed your life forever.
Yes, it did, Chris. A drug deal went bad, and me and 3 other people, my cousin and a co-defendant, Blaine Elkins, were involved in this drug deal. And we knew the drugs were in the house, and we went and broke into the house. And it didn't come to planned to take the drugs, and somebody was killed, and I was charged with the murder.
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, the drug dealer that you identified or targeted was dealing Quaaludes.
That is correct. They're called pharmaceutical Quaaludes, LNM 300s. That's correct, Chris.
And you decided to break into his house at night. You literally pried some windows off while he was sleeping, correct?
That is correct. Took 3 jalousies out and pushed the screen in to get inside the house while he was asleep. That is correct.
It's almost as if you had no fear of getting caught. It's not like you waited until he left. You didn't care that he was in the house.
No. There was no fear. That was the addiction that had control of me. So fear didn't play a factor in my life, Chris.
So it's midnight, 12:15 a.m. in the morning. I believe this time of this crime was significant, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. If it'd been 5 minutes before 12 a.m., I would have got a maximum of 15 years on my sentence. But after midnight, there's a charge called midnight burglary occupied dwelling, I believe, and it carries a life sentence, which I got. That is correct.
So you actually took out this man's jalousie windows, squeezed through the window, and then got into the house.
That is correct.
At 12:15 a.m.
That is correct.
What happened next?
That's when we called my cousin over from the car, who was waiting in the getaway car, opened the door and had him come in. And when he came in, as we're moving towards the house into the bedroom, something tricked him, some noise or something, and that's when things didn't go as to plan. And a fight broke out. The man had woke up, and my cousin had left. He was back in the car, so it was me and my co-defendant, Blaine Elkins, and we started fighting with the man.
So the victim, he wakes up in the middle of the night because he hears people in his house.
That is correct.
And what's interesting is that you guys were so brazen, you didn't turn and run. You actually went after him, correct?
Yes.
And a fight ensued.
Yes.
And you were telling him, we know you have drugs, give me the drugs.
That is correct.
And he wouldn't give them to you?
No, he would not.
So a fist fight
Yes.
occurred between you and your fall partner and the victim.
Yes.
And you got badly hurt in this fight, correct?
Yes, I did. Yes, I
What
did.
happened to you?
I had a black eye, I had a chipped tooth, and I had some abrasions on my face. I was hurt pretty
Didn't
bad.
you break a jaw?
It was fractured, but I don't think it was completely broke. But yes, I had problems eating.
Now, the victim, he falls to the ground.
Yes,
From your perspective, you thought he was unconscious. You just thought you knocked him out.
that is correct.
So at this point, you guys give up. Did you get the Quaaludes?
No, we did not.
So you leave, your full partner leaves, and whoever drove the vehicle, they had left prior to this altercation, correct?
No, my fall partner who was with me in the house, he drove the vehicle there. My cousin went back into the car waiting on us.
So you leave. You don't know this man is hurt.
No.
You didn't get the drugs. Life goes on for everybody.
Yes.
So at some point, about a year and a half later, I believe your fall partner, he gets arrested because he's got outstanding tickets.
Yes. Outstanding tickets, a warrant for his arrest. Yes, and he was arrested.
So what happens to him?
He gets arrested and he's in the county jail and he's got a year time for this, and he's going to be released after a year. In that time, he's calling me on the phone and telling me they know what we did, Jack. They know what we did. I know what he's talking about, but I'm acting like I do not know what he's talking about by not responding.
So he's calling you from the jail, but did he admit to the police what happened and now they were trying to get you?
Yes, that was my understanding at the time. That is correct.
He's calling you for about 6 months saying, Jack, they know what we did, they know what we did, but you weren't falling for it because you seemed to sense that the phone call was being recorded.
Yeah, I had that feeling that it was being recorded, so I just asked him that, was he going crazy or was he on the medication? I don't know what he's talking about, and just never replied to anything dealing with that incident that I knew exactly what he was talking about.
All right, so May 24th, 1983, a few months later, you walk out of your parents' house.
Well, me and a friend just walked out of my parents' house. We were going to go to the mall, and as soon as I walked out the door and opened it, I was pushed and slammed against the side of the house. The guy that was with me was pulled out of the house, and he was just put to the side, and I was told that I was being arrested.
Arrested for what?
They said pending burglary charges is what put me in handcuffs. That's all I knew, and I knew I had pending burglary charges.
They put you in the police car?
Yes, they did. They put me in the squad car.
And they wanted to take you to the police station?
That is correct.
Did they tell your mother what they were doing?
No, they just stated to my sister, who came out of the house next door, that I was being arrested for pending burglary charges, and that's all it was said.
All right, so then they drive off with you. What happens next?
Oh, they get within a mile of the police station and pull over, and they read me my random rights. And they read them 3 times and made sure they were clear that I understood what I was hearing. At that time, I didn't know, but I understand it now that this is real serious because they repeated it 3 times. Now I'm being told that I'm being investigated for a murder. And I was taken in a room, and in this room, they have pictures of this individual, the victim, that I knew that we attempted to rob. And there was a tape recorder, and it was being played. It was my co-defendant, Blaine Elkin's voice, telling his side of the story of what happened.
So you had no idea that this man had actually died?
Absolutely not.
So you left the house that night, beaten up. He was unconscious, but you never knew that he passed away. You never heard anything about it?
No, didn't hear nothing, Chris.
So what went through your mind when you realized this guy had died?
The phone calls that kept coming from him from the county jail sunk in hard, and then these pictures and his voice, reality, that man that I was fighting with was deceased.
So at this moment, you had been this 19-year-old kid who had no understanding of the consequences for breaking the law. And all of a sudden, you're being told that you're being investigated for a murder, and you realize, whoa, death penalty, life in prison. You shut down, you go in shock, no?
Absolutely. I couldn't respond. I had clouds in my brain, if you can understand what I'm saying. I couldn't believe that this was upon me. And yes, the possibility of the death penalty was all in my brain.
So here's you, who really had no understanding of consequences, and all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went off and you said, I've got to change. This was a wake-up call, no?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So they take you to Miami-Dade County Jail, which is an incredibly violent place in itself, no?
Yes.
At this point, had they charged you with first-degree murder?
At this point, yes. And they took fingerprints, and yes, this is where I was being charged with murder at this point.
So you were there for 9 months waiting for the trial and through the trial?
Yes, that is correct.
I believe you said you felt a little bit protected. You knew somebody at the jail, correct?
Yes, there was a few guys in there that kind of made a bond with, and they all had possibility of the electric chair or at least life in prison, and we kind of bonded. And they kind of looked out for me because I was much younger than these guys.
And fortunately, your parents had financial resources, so you didn't have to use a public defender.
That's correct.
So your father apparently at the time, which was a lot of money, he paid $10,000 to get you a private attorney.
That is correct.
Did you feel you had good representation?
I have to say yes for the simple fact that I was facing the death penalty and taking this to trial, knowing what I did. Yes, Chris, I thought I was dealt real fair by this attorney that my dad had got. Yes.
So you had this attorney, and they took you to the 7th floor, or you were on the 7th floor of Miami-Dade County Jail, and they showed you pictures of the victim after he had died. And then they also played a recording for you. And it was at this point, you said you couldn't take it, and you actually confessed.
That is correct.
What did you tell them?
I sat there and cried, and I was so emotionally caught up in that this is reality, that I took a human being's life, that this man died, and this is reality, that yes, I did this. And I knew that I had to stop the madness that was within my life. I had to change the addiction, and I had to change who I was.
And you felt the confession would spare you perhaps the death penalty?
Absolutely, Chris.
And it did?
Yes, it did.
Now, you did plead to a deal. So there was no real, there was no jury verdict. You pleaded guilty.
Yes, sir.
What was the deal you pleaded guilty to?
I pleaded from first-degree murder to second-degree murder, natural life with the possibility of parole, midnight burglary to run consecutive to the first life sentence, and 15 years to run concurrent for the robbery charge.
But there was a misconception, correct? Because I believe that you took this deal thinking you would probably spend 7 to 12 years in prison, but in reality, you did 20.
That is correct.
What was the misconception?
That the 12 years would be about what I would do before I would make my parole or be eligible and come up for parole. But in reality, it was 20 years before I made it out on parole.
Because you pleaded guilty, there was no jury verdict. So at some point, you ended up in the judge's chambers with your family, I'm assuming, and the judge sentenced you to life in prison. And you actually said you have no memory of that.
I can't come up with why I could not remember. I know that I was in a courtroom with my father, but I can't tell you what the judge told me and what I was sentenced to. I can't bring that up at all in my memory. I think I was still in the shock mode of this is for real, and I just couldn't focus.
So off you go to Lake Butler Reception Center, and this is the first time you've ever been in prison or jail, correct?
That is correct.
Well, you've been in jail for 9 months during the trial, but this was the first time you ever went to prison.
That's correct.
What was that like? You were 19?
Yes, I was 19.
What was that like?
It was scary because I was seeing the Jack Finleys everywhere. These were the Jack Finleys that haven't changed, and they were all around me, doing wrong, mischief, inmates being raped, people being robbed. This was a reality check to what really goes on to people who do wrong.
And respect entered your life for the first time ever.
That is correct, Chris. Because I knew I had to change, and I entered into my life the word respect. It was never there. So I gave myself self-respect so I could give respect to others. And that was helping me move forward with my change, Chris.
You ended up at Cross City Correctional Institution, and I believe 2 inmates that you were sharing a cell with asked you what your sentences were, and they told you that you would never get out of prison. How did you handle that?
This was a scary moment. I just got to this institution from Lake Butler. I'm in this 4-man room, and these other 3 end up discussing different things about sentences, and I got involved in the conversation, said that I had 2 life sentences and possibility of parole. These 3 got up, looked out the window, and I got up behind them looking out and asked them what they're looking at. And they said they're looking at the fence and wondering why I'm not on it. I said, you're never going to get out with 2 life sentences. That's what was said to me right then and there.
And how did you react to that?
It was simple because I've already had change in my heart. I didn't let them negative words get to me. I prayed all night long for the help and understanding to change. And when I come back from breakfast, I felt my shoulders being lifted up like I had weight on them, and I never looked back.
You were then transferred to Sumter Correctional Institution, and you were there from 1988 through 1993, and you told me something that I'll never forget, because you said a Sergeant Fernando got you all off the bus and told you the real deal. And
Yes.
I hope every young person listening to this hears this.
Yes, he is the orientation sergeant, and he told all, I think there was 45 or 50 of us, and stated he had a brown bag, like a grocery bag, smoking his cigar. In this brown bag was a shield, a small shield, and a pair of panties. And he said, you're going to do one or the two. The shield is basically to protect yourself, like a knife or what have you, or the panties, or you're going to be a woman and you're going to be sexually assaulted. One or the two. You're going to fight, or you become a woman in a man's body.
But now, I believe there were a lot of sexual predators, at any prison. But you said you had no fear.
No, I had no fear because I changed who I was, and I was becoming the new person that my parents brung into this world, this innocent child who now can become a man because he's got respect and self-respect for himself. I didn't have that fear of being raped because of who I was, and I stood up for myself, not physically, but just in a challenge of using my mind.
1983, you ended up at Belle Glade. What was Belle Glade like?
93 at Belle Glade was very scary and very different. I witnessed an episode in the chow hall that was pretty scary, Chris.
What happened?
I was in the chow hall eating breakfast, and within 3 tables, 20 feet away from me, I witnessed an inmate get killed with a lawnmower blade. Half of a lawnmower blade sharpened. It went through the back of his spine and came out through the buttocks area and pinned him to the seat.
And what did other inmates do?
Just like it was a slow fire drill, just get up and go out. There wasn't no panicking, screaming, or running. It was the norm of prison to see fights, assaults, and possibly the death of somebody.
What was the best prison you ever went to?
The best prison I went to, I gotta say, is Everglades CTP, where I ended up getting paroled out. That was the best.
It was the best because of your parole, or
Yes.
or the actual facility was a good facility?
It was both, because the facility was good and because of my parole.
March 4th, 2003, you were released for the first time on parole.
Yes, I was released for Pompano work release, and my sisters came and picked me up and took me to Georgia on Interstate Compact, and I went to Georgia to live with my parents.
And did you have a job waiting for you when you got there?
No, but I had a job my second day out.
And what was that job?
That job was working at Concord Fabrics. It's a factory that processes cloth.
So you were living with your parents and you were working at this cloth, manufacturing
Yes,
factory.
that is correct.
Your parole was violated 16 months later.
Yes.
So you had done 20 years in prison, you were paroled, and then 16 months later you violated your parole.
I was working at this factory, and I guess there was a lot of jealous people there, I'm not sure. And my car was keyed, and I quit, and I came back the next day, and I made a statement in the parking lot to a supervisor I was speaking to. And my statement was, if I find out whom, the word whom, keyed my car, I will kick their butt. I left. 5 hours later, I was arrested for terrorism threats, Chris.
Terrorism threats?
That was the arrest that put me in the car.
You didn't even use a profanity.
No.
You just said, I'm going to kick their butt. So did somebody overhear you say that?
Yes, apparently through the paperwork that I got from the courts of Georgia, there was a third-party person that heard me make this statement to this supervisor, and she filed the police report.
And then what happened once the police report was filed?
They came and arrested me on my parents' property, and my parole officer was there, and he told me that, was I at Concord Fabrics this morning? I said, yes, I was. He says, did you speak to anybody? And I told him what I said, and he says, you're being arrested for terrorism threats. I thought he was joking, Chris. Terrorism threats, I think of a plane, a gun, and hostages.
So this then goes back to the Florida Parole Commission,
That is correct.
and they reviewed the case, and what happened?
Georgia was told by Florida that they have a hold on me, and whatever happens in their state, that I am being to be released into their custody and come back to have my parole revoked.
So they revoked, the state of Florida revoked your parole because you made that statement.
That is correct.
So how many extra years did you get in prison for that statement?
I did right at 17 years, Chris.
So you did 20 years, you were paroled. You made that statement, and you got an additional 17 years in prison.
For simple assault charge, a misdemeanor charge, that's correct.
So you ended up back at Lake Butler Reception Center again. You had to start over a whole new sentence.
All over again.
So you go back to Butler, and where do they send you from Lake Butler?
From Lake Butler, I went to Century Correctional Institution.
And how many years did you spend there?
I wasn't there 6 months because I ran into my co-defendant for the first time. I haven't seen him since 1983 in the county jail. And this is where I ran into him.
This is the man you committed the original crime
That
with.
is correct. He seen my name tag as I was walking by on the rec yard, and he said, "I know a Finley from Miami." And I looked at him and didn't really connect. And I said, "Yeah, I'm Jack Finley, Miami." And then it hit me. This was the man that we committed this crime with. Now, my thought was, this is the man that put me in prison, and I got 2 life sentences. Go ahead and just take him out. Fight him. And then the other part of me was the person that I am now speaking. I was changed, and I forgave him, and we just talked, Chris.
He committed this crime with you. It was you and him were beating up this man trying to get his Quaalude. And the police never knew about that. That was an unsolved murder, correct?
That is correct.
So he gets picked up, your full partner gets picked up for these outstanding, tickets or violations. And somewhere along the line, did he feel guilty about this occurrence that happened where a man was killed, and he felt he needed to tell the police about it?
It's possible. I can't say that for a fact, but it's possible, Chris, that there was a change in his life. I can't witness that because I wasn't there.
So you were actually paroled and released from prison for the second time.
That is correct.
After 37 years.
That is correct.
Who picked you up?
My 2 sisters came running to me when they opened that door, Chris.
Think back to yourself at age 16. You were out of control. Alcohol, drugs, stealing, lying. What would you like to tell a group of 16-year-olds just like you on how to stay out of prison and how to live their life?
I would say it's time to stop and look in the mirror and see who you really are, and take a deep, deep look inside of the people that you are hurting right now, the people you've hurt, and understand that this is not who you are. It's because of the circle you're in, or the drugs, or the alcohol. The addiction has got a hold of you. You got to break that cycle and become the person that your parents want you to become.
Jack, I want to thank you for being here on Men Going Home and letting us interview you. And I wish you all the best moving forward.
I appreciate that, Chris. You're a great man, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Over the years, I've met hundreds of life-sentenced men who ended up in prison because they made bad choices and bad decisions. And what I've learned is that we are all just one bad decision from incarceration.